right, hello. I'm Jennifer Troyer, Dean of the Belk College of Business at UNC Charlotte. So on behalf of the Belk College of Business, we're happy to welcome you to the Entrepreneurial Decisions Public Speaker Series. So this year, our theme is Art and Design in the Marketplace. This is an exciting partnership with the College of Arts and Architecture. It's just one more reminder that the entrepreneurial spirit crosses disciplines. And we have 49er alumni, like our speaker tonight, who are driving business throughout our region through leadership, creativity, and innovation. So you can also learn more about our entrepreneurship programming through the Belk College and then other speakers that we'll have in the spring by visiting our website at belkcollege.uncc.edu/innovate. So we are pleased to have with us UNC Charlotte College of Arts and Architecture alum, David Ravin. He's the president and CEO of Northwood Ravin, LLC, and he'll be sharing his story with us tonight. David's presentation will be followed by some questions from Justin Webb, who is our Belk College Distinguished Professor of Innovation and College of Arts and Architecture Dean, Brooke Mueller. So thanks for partnering with us, Brooke.
Absolutely.
So I'll also share that we want your questions. So please, as David is speaking, as Brooke and Justin are asking questions, please submit your questions through the chat function at any point, and we'll get to as many as we can in our time tonight. So let me just turn it over to you, Brooke, to introduce David.
Thanks a lot, Jennifer, and thank you for supporting this collaboration. And also, Justin, you've been such a great collaborator with the College of Arts and Architecture, putting together the Arts and Design in the Marketplace series. And I also want to thank Meg Whalen, who's the College of Art and Architecture's Director of Communications and External Relations, for helping to organize this event. So I am thrilled to introduce David Ravin. He's gonna provide us a background of his work and how he got to the place he is currently. But I think I can speak on behalf of many of our students in the college, and in particular the School of Architecture, in saying people are considering careers that marry business and design, and they're looking for mentors and they're looking for sources of inspiration. So with that in mind, David, thank you so kindly for taking the time with us and sharing one spectacularly successful model of marrying business and creative realms. So again, thank you for being with us this evening.
Absolutely. All right. Would you like me to start? All right. Let's see if I can do this. You seeing my screen?
Yeah, looks good. Just make it full screen. There we go.
All right. You have it? Okay. Well, thank you for having me. As you can tell, I don't do a lot of the presentations on the Zoom, but I listen to them. So if something goes astray, just let me know as I'm figuring out how to be a presenter on these. So let me jump in. So I actually always knew I wanted to be an architect. I actually come from a family of physicians. My father, my uncle, my mother was even in medicine, my brothers, cousins, but for whatever reason, I was just infatuated with buildings and architecture. I knew I wanted to be an architect before I could even really pronounce it. So I was always drawing buildings and just interested in the built environment. So I wanted to try to get as much learning about architecture as I could, but it's difficult to learn about architecture and what the study of architecture is before you go to college. I did take all the art classes I could. I tried to take classes that were offered randomly throughout town. I grew up in the Raleigh-Durham area from architects and stuff, and I was just infatuated with it. I actually even did a summer program. This was probably the most eye-opening experience at Cornell, my junior high school summer, where they just throw you right into it. That's actually a picture of the Cornell one on the screen. And that's where I started to learn about all-nighters and critiques and how your work that you work so hard on could be critiqued in a negative way. And, you know, you had to have a tough skin. So that was pretty eye-opening, but I was still very interested in it. So immediately upon graduating from high school, I didn't really know a lot, didn't really have a lot of resources as to what to look at. And so I only knew of 2 architecture schools in North Carolina. There was one at State and one in Charlotte. And a lot of my high school friends were all going to NC State. And so I decided not to go there because I really wanted to focus on architecture and didn't want to get sucked into something else. So away I went to UNCC. I actually stayed for 5 years, even though the program is 4 years, because along the way, I ended up with like 2 C's one year in studios, and I was not happy with having a C. So I said, I'm just going to take them over again. I remember my classmates saying that was nuts, but I just, you know, was not happy with that. So I stayed 5th year, and along with that 5th year, I actually ended up doing a minor in geography, which started to show me a little bit more about urban planning. It was of interest at the time, and so I minored in it, really liked it, and decided I was going to pursue architecture though at the graduate level. One of my summers though, I wanted to show this. I worked for O'Brien Atkins in Durham as a summer internship, and I did my first project, and this is one. And you think I did that building. I didn't. I did the roof. It was a flat roof, and I put a pitched roof on it. And that was my first, like, wow, I designed this, and look at it. It's there. I thought it was the coolest thing. I remember my girlfriend at the time did not think that was an oh wow experience, but I was hooked to see it. After graduation, I went to the University of Michigan, and because of my minor in geography, I wanted to dual major in architecture and urban planning. It was going to graduate school from undergrad. It's similar but different. You're used to what's going to happen, and you've learned through undergrad all the ins and outs. So you're surrounded by people coming from other undergrads. So that was similar, but you know, every college approaches architecture differently. So there were some things to learn about different aspects of architecture. At UNCC, it was really design focused, I thought. You really were getting into more of a 3-dimensional thinking. Michigan's a little more structurally oriented. So there were some deficiencies I had to catch up on in terms of all the structures and calculations and things like that when I went there. But it was of interest. Now, urban planning was really interesting because it just had a more macro view of things. So I was taking classes there, ended up getting my Master of Architecture, but decided not to finish the urban planning because I decided at that point I needed to learn more about business and law because I wanted to be a developer. I'd started to work in architectural offices and determined that I wanted to be more of the client than the one drawing window and door frames. And so back in my day, it was all hand drawn. So we were just starting to get into CAD. So I was more interested in becoming the client. So I was certain that if I had an MBA and a JD, I would have everything I needed to know. So I dual degreed again, moved back to North Carolina and went to Wake Forest. But then after a year of business school, I said, you know, I think this is what I needed to know. I went to 1 day of law school and heard the presentation and the orientation. And I said, no, I don't need to know this. So I actually went to the registrar and said, you know, I'm actually going to pursue a business degree, but I'm going to pursue it at a different school that focuses on real estate. So I'm going to transfer. And they were far from pleased that I had, you know, taken a spot for 1 day, but it just wasn't I could tell from one day it wasn't going to be anything I wanted to focus on. So I finished the second year up at MIT, who had, I believe, is the oldest graduate program in real estate, or one of them. It was interesting because it's a program where they pull from different schools there, architecture, business, predominantly. And I obviously had all the architecture and design classes. In fact, I was a TA for one of the architecture classes when I was there. And it actually, our class was in the dome that you see whenever they show a picture of MIT. So I really took mostly business classes. I was already up to speed on it because I'd had a year at Wake Forest, but obviously it was geared towards real estate for the most part, which I just found fascinating, pro formas and cash flow analysis and things. So I was hooked. At that point, though, I realized that it was probably time to get a job, that I had danced around however many graduate schools throughout across the country, and it was probably time to put it all to work. But I had been in and out of things, as you can see here, along the way. I did intern at architectural firms. That's where I started to figure out maybe I want to be more of the client. I did a labor out in construction. That was fascinating. I worked at the Durham City Planning Department for a while to learn about the urban planning piece. And then when I graduated Michigan, before I went to the next graduate school, I worked for one of the professors at his architectural firm for a while, and began to understand more about business in terms of winning business from an architectural actual firm. And then I actually thought it was really neat. I went to Tampa in between all these and worked for a small firm that actually brought in people like me, and you became the architect and the GC. They were smaller projects, but so you did the drawings and then you oversaw the construction. And I really liked that because I could sort of see the things come together. But they were small jobs, obviously, but to see things come to fruition was really neat. So I get a job. I was actually headed to work at Heinz in Atlanta. And I was fascinated by what Heinz was doing. But I got this call from the HR person in Charlotte for Crosland. I'd heard of Crosland when I was at UNCC. They were a home builder. I was quasi familiar with them. And I said, I want to go down and see Charlotte and talk to these folks. And it was great. It was a lot of older people that were there. A lot of them had come from design backgrounds, Harvard and Columbia and other things. So I was really interested in why these guys, what they were doing. And it just happened to be that the opening at that time, they were doing commercial and retail and multifamily, and the opening was in multifamily. And I accepted that job, but I didn't know any better. I could have accepted a job in retail, and I'd be talking to you from a retail point of view. But so I got into multifamily, and I actually, thankfully, was in multifamily because you do a lot more designing in residential than you do in office and retail. There you're building large projects, but really the tenants are the ones upfitting their spaces. And so in multifamily, you're really designing it, everything, the unit plans, everything out. So it's all in-house, if you will. So I stayed there, really was exposed to everything that goes on in development, how you track costs, what you're looking at for returns, legal documents, how you work in rezoning, how you work with other people throughout the organization, interior and exterior, communication. I mean, it was very eye-opening, but I knew I was hooked. And then came the recession, 2001, the first recession that I went through. And I was just finishing Birkdale Village. I was the lead person for the multifamily that was at that project. I didn't know what a neat, fascinating project that would become for Charlotte. It was one of the first things I was assigned to, so I did a lot of learning on it. But the recession came, and we were pretty nervous that Birkdale Village was going to not weather the storm really well. There was a Northwood Mall was being built down the highway 77, and we thought for sure that would be successful and that would drain the energy out of Birkdale Village. So we were trying to finish it and sell it before it fell apart. And look, that was the first wrong call we made, and I've made several since then. But Birkdale Village thrived. Northlake never really impacted it much, but we were nervous about that. But it was a really fascinating project to be involved in right off the bat. So years later, I actually became president of the residential division at Crosland. And that was pretty eye-opening. Within our division, we had development and property management and construction, affordable housing, obviously mixed use, which we were doing. We were very active. I was starting to get my feet wet with respect to running a division and having to work with so many different people. We were very active, but predominantly active in just North Carolina at the time. And, I was just, as I said, getting my feet wet. And then wham, the 2010 recession hits. And that was difficult. So people ask, I get questions a lot of, wow, how did you start Northwood Ravin? What was all the thinking behind it? To be honest, there wasn't a lot of thinking behind it. Crosland was having to slowly shut down. We were overextended in land, had a lot of debt. Debt was on land was really cratering the organization's cash flow because land didn't produce any cash, and all you were doing was paying interest on all these loans for land. So it was just sucking the cash flow out of it. So it was a lot of turmoil in the organization. And at the time, the head and the board went to each of the division presidents and said, hey, if you want to spin off, if you want to take your folks with you and start a company, we're open to discuss it. I remember I went home that night and said, that would be a crazy decision. Who would want to open a company in a recession? And what they were sort of doing was paying out bonuses. And obviously, as the president of it, I had a pretty big one coming. And so I remember just sort of laying awake in bed saying, probably the smart decision here is just put that in the bank, weather this storm, because this recession feels horrible, and fight another day. All the other divisions were slowly meeting with their personnel and letting them go. And so that was my decision. But I came in to start having the discussions with the people that worked for me in the division, and I just couldn't let so many people go. So I said, all right, I'm gonna start up, transfer 80 people at the time over to this new company that I'll start with the bonus money and give it a shot. I was very nervous about it, didn't know if it was the right decision, but just felt an obligation to not, let so many people go. I still had to let a decent amount of folks go. Unfortunately, it was the worst of times, but I could save 80. And so we elected to just take development, construction, and property management out. I did not move affordable housing. Thankfully, the lady that worked under me that was managing that, she started her own company, Laurel Street Partners, and she spun off and did that. And then mixed use just sort of faded as no one really was interested in carrying that forward during a recession. So away I went. What's extremely important in development is equity. So I knew right away, we were using the Crosland family equity when I was at Crosland, but I knew right away that I would have to find an equity partner that would provide the capital to start this company. So we went out and I actually interviewed 4 or 5 equity sources. So despite the fact that we were in a major recession, there was still money out there. What was amazing is out of, we'll say it's 5, flew up to Manhattan, and I literally could walk to all 4 of the equity people. They were just in different buildings right next to each other. So the whole idea that a lot of the capital is based in New York is true. I saw 4 of the equity sources within a couple blocks of one another. The only other one was out in Houston. But there was this group, Northwood. They were still relatively new, fundraising. The guy who I had met with went to NC State. He was in engineering, but he was familiar with the South. I met the founder. He was extremely friendly. He had a way of sort of setting up the company that I thought matched alignment. It just was the most comfortable of the few. They were wanting to take a long-term view of how we do this. The other four just wanted to get in, make a lot of money, and get out. And I had said, I already saw what happens when that occurs with Crosland. I want a long-term view. So we started Northwood Ravin in 2011. As we sit here today, flash forward, I mean, we've really grown a lot in, what would that be, 9 years. April of next year will be our 10-year anniversary. But we continued to keep those divisions. We've grown those divisions. We actually added interior design along the way to always design our interior of our projects to be unique to us. There was a lot to sort of set up though. I had to get licensed as a general contractor in a lot of states. Property management requires you to be licensed. So there were a lot of those things going on. Taking your general contracting license is a feat in of itself, pretty, it's open book. You bring in 1 million books and sort of filter through an online class or test to get it. And just this year, they've started adding continuing ed every year. So the continuing ed of construction, continuing ed of real estate license, I'm in continuing ed a lot for the company on various things. But we now have 350 employees, and we've really expanded up into the Mid-Atlantic, down into Florida, and over to Texas. It's been exciting. Every year has been bigger than the previous year. And, it's just been, from the minute we said go, it has really taken off. So since in the 9 years, we've developed and constructed 38 projects. For the most part, with 1 or 2 exceptions to those 38, we always build our own projects as our GC. So we're in-house, and then we manage our own projects as well. You can see sort of our growth in terms of our size in North Carolina and across the country. And then, the value of our portfolio right now. We rarely look at this number because it's on paper. And until you sell things, you don't really get there as you find out as a developer. But around 3 billion is what the value of everything we've done in 9 years has been. This is where we have been, the states and cities we're in, and the different projects. It's never the same project. Every one we design specifically for the site and the city. So a lot of different things going on. We did sell in the lower right-hand corner several projects when we first couple of years of starting. We said, there's no way that the multifamily market can get any better, so we should sell. And how wrong we were. It only continued to just increase, and I wish we had held on to everything. But we sold some, made a lot of investors happy that we were showing that we were building value. But since then, we've really held on to everything. This is currently what we've owned throughout the half of the United States. Quite a bit, obviously mostly focused in North Carolina, which isn't surprising, but this is all the projects in our current portfolio as we sit here today. So I just wanted to show you some of the projects to show you that, as I mentioned, they're all designed differently. They're specific for markets. This is where the architect piece of me just, likes to be involved and change things up. It's never routine. This is our project in Nashville, downtown Nashville, really near the Gulch. If anyone's familiar with that, this is our pool, elevated courtyard. There's a Publix grocery store on the first floor, but this one's been exciting. The view, actually, it's all on an axis with the state capitol, which is off the page. Many of you probably know about the view. Happy to talk about that. That was a unique acquisition and hold. We still own that. Downtown Charlotte, 51 stories. We're constantly playing with it and upgrading it. I wanted to show the other extreme. We built an all rental townhouse community in Chapel Hill called Chapel Watch. This is actually my favorite project of our whole portfolio. Everyone's always surprised when I say that, but it's really like a neat village when you drive through there. And maybe because we do so many high density urban complicated projects, that something just different has always been appealing to me, but really like this project, northern side of Chapel Hill. Staying in Chapel Hill, this is something we recently completed. It's called Carolina Square. It has a Target. It was the first Target in Chapel Hill on the first floor. It's done fantastic. This is probably the project I get the most phone calls from parents who have kids going to Chapel Hill or trying to get them on the wait list and into this project, which is flattering to get them involved in here. But we usually have a pretty significant wait list due to its location right on Franklin Street and on the edge of campus. This is a project in Dallas, in Park Lane. Park Lane is a retail project that Northwood had bought, and it had an empty lot on it. And so we ended up adding an apartment project on the edge of the retail center. This actually isn't shown in the picture, but the most unique thing here, we built this from ground up, was that there was a gym, an abandoned gym on top of a parking deck, 5 stories in the air, and it had never been built out. And we went in and changed the gym to 64 apartments. I don't have a photo of it, but it was a pretty interesting thing to rehab a gym into apartments that was sitting on top of a parking deck, and that was built in tandem with this. Commonwealth is here in Charlotte. I chose this picture because it's a pretty neat situation here where we actually built a quasi-public park on the edge of our project, which abuts another city county park. And we've set this up with a beer garden, and there's volleyball, and we let the food trucks come in, and it's really been highly successful. It obviously has been a little bit slower because of COVID, but before COVID hit, this thing was just going crazy, and we were having a lot of events out on this green, and we hope to bring those back soon. It's over in Plaza Midwood. This is McEwen. This is a rendering, although it's mostly done at this point. That is in outside of Nashville and Franklin. It's in Cool Springs, to be specific. And that's a mixed-use project. That's an office building you're looking at with standalone retail, and then the apartments are in the back. And it's 6 blocks. We've been building it out over time. It really does look like this. It's really neat to sort of pull all the pieces together and see how they work. It's a mixture of uses project instead of a mixed use project where they're not stacked. Caraway is a new project that we just finished on the northern side of Chapel Hill. The coolest thing about this is we ended up with vacant land that was supposed to be for a grocery store. That sort of fell apart when the recession came. So we've now become drive-in theater experts. And so we opened a drive-in theater right next to this. You get creative when the market works against you. So that's the neatest thing that just opened up on this project. We also have become office experts, and I say that with a lot of sarcasm. We ended up buying a great site right on the edge of that's the Durham Bulls Stadium in Durham, and we built a apartment project, Van Allen. That's really why we wanted the site, but we ended up with land, and we didn't really want to build a second phase of apartments. We thought that was going to be too much, and so we ended up building this office tower. We couldn't have delivered it at a worse time, unfortunately, as the pandemic hit right as we were opening. So we're just now starting to see some office tenants come back and express interest. It's a really neat building. This is one of our first sort of in-house approaches to doing it, and we built it, and we probably overbuilt it for Durham. We spent a lot of money on it, probably more so than we needed to within that Durham market, but it's something that we think will stand the test of time. It has a lot going for it, a large rooftop area, which you can sort of see with that gray boxes on top is all open rooftop with a huge balcony on it overlooking the Durham Bulls. Where I'm actually sitting today is Uptown 550. That's in the office that we put in this project. This one here in Charlotte, we actually we started to do this more and more. We're mixing tower with mid-rise to offer different price points for apartments. So obviously less expensive apartments down in mid-rise to more expensive products in our tower. This is under construction right now. There's a rendering of our tower that we're building in Ballantyne. That's pretty interesting. A lot's going to happen in Ballantyne. This is already under construction and topped out and fairly far along with the exterior. That we did a shared parking deck with Northwood office, which is that over there, and we share the parking deck between us. This will be interesting to see. It's the first tower built outside Uptown or South Park in Charlotte. So a lot of eyes are on this one to see, okay, how does a tower outside those urban core areas work? And we're doing it. We're excited about it. We think it'll be a good market. It's a captive market. No one else can build within Ballantyne proper because Northwood owns it. So we're going to start opening that next year. And we're bullish on it, but it was certainly a pretty big step forward. 500 West Trade is also in Uptown Charlotte in the shadow of the View. We're doing that in partnership with Northwestern Mutual. Again, a tower and a mid-rise, smaller tower here, but this one also has been topped out. A lot of the exteriors coming together, and we have retail all along Trade Street, and that's where the trolley and such is going. And then across the street actually is where the light rail and the train station are going. So hopefully that whole end of that part of Uptown comes together. And then Lancaster is this is an all rental townhouse community south of Ballantyne that we're doing in Charlotte. It's under construction and being framed up right now. 108 townhouses, 2 and 3 bedrooms, but it has a pool and a green area in the middle. And this is more for the folks that have families or in transition between homes and want a place to be temporarily, but still have it professionally managed. So how do we differentiate our project? A lot of things. We focus a lot on details inside the units, is again where the design background comes from, and our interior design group. This is not a rendering. This is a photo of our project in Nashville. You can see all the little touches we're doing in there. Similar with this is Commonwealth. Like there's certain things that we always see, you know, the stove with the microwave above, that's just sort of always an indication of an apartment. So we've changed that up and added a hood. This is the view, pretty unique with, you know, if you ever see a spiral stair, it's most likely the view. And then that's Van Allen starting to change, you know, different finishes, dark cabinets, gold. So always playing with the unit plans and the finishes, trying to improve them from project to project. We've added barn doors and studios to put our bedrooms on the interior. So that is something that I think is being done more and more, but we've tried to take a unique approach to it. I've been doing it for quite some time, always trying to perfect it. We've done enormous gyms. As you can see here, this is actually a 2-story. This is just one of 2 gyms at Commonwealth, but it's really for core fitness, and people are just amazed when they come into it. Our lead developer of here is a huge core fanatic, and so he really set this up. We see a lot of folks big time training in this one. All right, this is our courtyard at Providence Row, which is over in South Park. It's an enormous courtyard, but we really wanted everyone that was focused on the courtyard to feel that they were in a resort environment. So you can see all the different things we've done in there. Spent a lot of money on that courtyard. Very careful about dimensions. We've also added, which is something that we've done at Northwood Ravin. So many of our projects have a barista, and that, not showing the barista there, but that's where they are in the morning. They offer free coffee. Pretty much anything you can get from a Starbucks is in there. They're open certain hours in the morning. You just go down and they'll make you up whatever drink you want. At Commonwealth, we decided everyone has pets, so we actually partnered with Skipper and did a large-scale dog, I won't call it a park, but a kennel, and you can overnight your dogs at this one, which was definitely taking it a step further. So if you were going out of town, they can hold on to your dog for as long as you need. This is, again, another shot of that courtyard I was talking about. You can see the beer garden down there where we will host events and serve alcohol. And then we have rooftop bars. So if you live at a Northwood Ravin project, you have a private membership to our bars. This is on the 50th floor of the View and open certain nights a week. And you have to be a resident in order to get up to it. And it's a fully functioning bar. We have our license with ABC to do it. And then we actually have a rooftop bar at our project here at Stonewall. And if you live at any of these projects, you can go to any of the bars that are up there. Obviously, that has been curtailed a lot with COVID, but that is one of the unique perks that we've put in. This is the rooftop. This is the outside of that bar at Uptown 550. We have a large outdoor area, thankfully, because we can open that during COVID and have a few people out there. A lot of the other ones don't have outdoor spaces. We have concierges. They're hired. They work for us full time. They're at our different projects 24/7. They're there to greet you, to help you however you need. They give a level of customer service that we're always very happy with. We take it to an extreme on our gyms. We don't just give you a gym, but with the gym comes the steam room and a sauna, and they're men's and women's. And then we have indoor. There's an indoor hot tub for you to sort of wind down after your workout. That's here at 550. There's another one that we did at Caraway. So this is pretty common that we'll do a full range of these things. We have golf simulators, which are expensive, but people love them. You can go and hit balls and play. They're actually really good, expensive, but they work really well. So hurdles, I'm finishing with this. So one thing that I've been asked is like, well, what was unexpected about this huge thing? You showed all these projects, it's wonderful. Here's what I did not ever learn or really expect to be in. All of a sudden I have 350 employees. Took a little bit of that training in business school, but it is when you get to a certain level, I always tell people, be careful what you wish for. Because what I love to do is get involved in projects. I love designing projects. I love seeing them come together. I love to see how people are going to use them. Are they using them how I envisioned? But really, as any organization gets bigger, you're spending less and less time doing that. You're spending more time managing your personnel. As you can imagine, 350 people, 350 different issues. So, I've had to spend a lot of time sort of working on this aspect of leadership and what we expect of people and culture. And it always starts at the top and what your expectations are and how you approach situations and conflict. And these are slides, just some of the slides that, and there's lots of them that I work with the senior management team on, saying, hey, this is how we want to be leading our organization. This is what I expect you to approach things. And I guess I never really totally understood that that's the approach to how you have to manage a large business is people. Our head of HR will always laugh that I said, this would be so much fun if we didn't have people. And I say that always tongue in cheek, but that's what we talk about most of the day is problems with our residents or problems with our staff or conflict resolution. That's what I spend a lot of time doing. And you never saw any of that in the beginning of the slide deck, that's what I was excited about, but that's what becomes of it. And I think that people believe like the more people that report to you, the higher up in an organization, socially, that means you're, succeeding. And I will tell you from that position, it's not as glamorous as you think. It really, I don't know many people that I've ever met that want to be, truly want to be a CEO and a head of a large company. Most people have ended up there because they've started something. I mean, think of Apple and all these companies. I mean, they started by doing what they love to do. And then all of a sudden they're the head of a huge organization. That's not really what they signed up for, but that just comes with the territory. So that is my slide deck. I appreciate it. I know it's a little bit lengthy, but let me climb out of this and somehow get you guys back to.
David, I think I'll chat a little bit while you're doing that, but
Okay.
yeah, thank you very much for that. That was great. A lot of beautiful, unique properties that y'all have developed over time, really unique sort of career path that you've taken. You've generated a lot of interest from the audience as well. So Brooke and I have called an audible, and we'll ask a couple of questions from our list real quick, but then we'll turn to the audience questions and make sure that we get through those. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
You know, you talked about your career path, but one thing that you didn't quite talk about yet was really when your entrepreneurial intentions surfaced, and how they might have coalesced. So can you talk a little bit about when you had you talked about from a very early age you want to be an architect, but when did you start thinking that you might want to be an entrepreneur, start your own business, and what were some of the formative experiences, role models, mentors, key partners that made you pull the trigger?
It's a great question. And, you know, I think I bounced around to get there. I do remember as I was getting into development and working with people that you get to a point in any job, I feel like, where you think, you know, I can do this. I'm not getting as much from my supervisor. I can figure this out, and I could do it better. You know, you're a little bit misled, but you're sort of hitting a ceiling. You say, well, I want to try doing something myself. But similar to what I said, be careful what you wish for. I don't think you always understand everything that your superior or supervisor is dealing with. And so by you believing you can do pieces of it better doesn't mean you can do the whole thing better. So I was always sort of, you know, every year saying, I can do a little bit more. I can do a little bit more. I do think starting the company, as I mentioned, was a bit of the circumstance. I don't know if I ever would have taken that jump without the recession. And you know, if you'd asked me a couple years into it, I definitely wouldn't have done it. You know, I was like, what is this, payroll, you know, people, HR? I didn't realize this came with all that, but you know, it's part of that jump that you make. So, you know, I was definitely interested in doing my own projects, but I didn't fully understand that it's a bigger event than just that, if that makes any sense. It wasn't very intentional. I didn't have it laid out on, you know, here I want to be in 2020, I want to be here. I wasn't that focused. It was just sort of, hey, I want to be doing more. And all of a sudden, there I was.
That's interesting, because we usually talk about entrepreneurs having a plan, and it seemed like you might have been pushed into it or otherwise and taken it by surprise, I guess. But you've done extremely successful regardless. So.
Well, and I think you have to be passionate about what it is. I do look at how other companies have started, Tesla, as I mentioned, Apple, Facebook. You know, if you really look at a lot of that was because the founder was passionate about doing whatever started the company. And that's what they stayed up late doing. That's what was so intriguing to them. And then all of a sudden, you know, it grows and grows and grows and they turn around. But that was how I got into it. Was my passion was projects, and I wanted to do more, and I thought I could handle more by myself. And so it just kept growing. And then all of a sudden you have a company around you. But I do look at how most companies start, and it's because someone has a great idea and they're passionate about it and they want to do it more and more. And then it just blossoms.
Thank you. Brooke, you got one?
Yeah, I was going to ask David, and thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it. You have this role as an entrepreneur, and you obviously have to address customer needs, but there also seems to be a civic placemaking dimension and this interest in creating great cities. And I wonder if you could speak to those kinds of commitments as you're thinking about, how this pencils and all these other kind of internal dynamics associated with the project, how you think about it in relationship to the city of Charlotte that's really coming into its own, for example?
That's a great question. So I've worked with a lot of developers throughout, collaboration of projects and doing other things. And I can tell you that every one of the successful developers I've ever come across is an architect wannabe, whether they've officially done it or unofficially done it. They all, to be successful, look at it beyond just the numbers. They inevitably, in any conversation you have, there is a piece of the project that doesn't necessarily make economic sense that you can do on an Excel spreadsheet. It's whether you're building a park as part of it, whether you're building a plaza, rooftop, something in it. Every developer I've ever worked with has that gene of saying, hey, we've got to do more than just our own project. We've got to contribute to the public somehow, some way. And it's just intrinsic to the person saying, because if we're successful at that, this project will be more sought after. And it's just, it becomes a lot of gut of, do I spend this extra $1 million or $2 million on this park? I can't really tell you that there's going to be a return because it's free, but I think being close to the park is going to raise our office or multifamily rents because it's within walking distance, and it's just bet the city will be drawn to it, and so I'm going to do it. And so I've definitely come from that through the training, but I'm surprised with how many people that literally couldn't draw a square on a napkin that I've worked with as developers. That is how their brain is working. They can't really draw it for you, but they know that they've got to have a component to it that makes it special. And I think all the great ones do that.
Thank you. Justin, do you want to field a question from the
yeah, I'll do that. This question comes from Karen. I'm gonna tear apart your last name, Karen Lilliegren, who I believe is one of your fellow alum from the College of Arts and Architecture. She said, would love to hear more about how you deal with inherent conflict of interest between GC, design, equity roles within one umbrella. There could be so many benefits of doing it all in-house, but there are also risks without checks and balances for all sides. How do you keep good design in check without it getting value engineered out for the sake of the bottom line driving the projects?
Great question. And I think the whole reason that I kept all three of those components from the Crosland days is because it is easier to resolve those conflicts, because we don't look at any one of them as an individual profit center. I mean, we do earn development fees, we earn contracting fees, we earn property management fees, but those are pennies compared to the value creation that we do in our projects. So what always wins in conflict resolution is what's best for the project. Is haircutting some of the fee to put money into upgrading a part of the project more important? The answer is always yes, because we care at the end of the day about creating the value of the project, not about did the construction guy maximize their change orders and make more than they thought, or development guy doing it. We certainly have those conversations all the time. It's frustrating to people. The contractor, for sure, in our company gets frustrated to say, that's not on the drawings. You guys are wanting to change this because you've been out here in the field and you realize it's not right. But when they've been with us a while, they start to understand that we're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. We're doing it for a reason. And usually there's talking about why we're doing it, why we think changing it makes sense, and why the headache of it's going to be worthwhile at the end. I always say, on any of the calls we have with any division, I said, we're in the business of renting apartments. At the end of the day, that's our business. We're not in the business to just build them. We're not in the business just manage them. We have an end customer, and that's who we're really doing all this for. Either they're going to pay to live there or they won't. And I think people that join our organization from just coming from a GC or just coming from a developer, at first have a hard time understanding all the components that come together. But after a while, they say, oh, you know what? We're all on the same team. This is great. Everyone's trying to go for the same goal. We're all under this umbrella. And I think it works out. I believe we have less conflict than if we had outsourced all of those things, because we can always step back and say what's best for the project.
It's an important thing from an entrepreneurship standpoint, that being purpose of the business is a customer. And so you really have to think about the customer's needs.
Absolutely.
When making those sort of decisions. Brooke?
Yeah, sure. This is a question from Fahad Firdausi. What kind of acquisition and development opportunities might you be looking at over the next 1 to 2 years and beyond? Like, we're in this volatile, strange present. And so how are you thinking about the future of your practice relative to where we are right now and where we might be in the next couple of years?
Another great question. So, development's slow. You never get to say, well, I've found this piece of land and I'll have it under construction next month. I mean, it's usually find a piece of land, you're going through entitlements, which could take upwards of a year. Then you're in design, which could take upwards of a year. Then you're under construction for 2 years. So, when you look at a piece of land, you're really thinking 4 years down the road. So where we sit today, we have a number of projects that are underway that were obviously pre-pandemic, that we're continuing to push forward. They're in motion. We still believe in them long-term, and we're doing that. We have, however, changed gears a little bit, and we've looked and are starting to generate them, but it'll be 4 years before they come together, of large-scale detached and attached low-density projects. Imagine a large sort of single-family community, maybe a little denser, but with a park and a pool and everything, and it's all rental. In a good school district, and you can come and have a detached house away from other folks, but you share a lot of the amenities and services that we would provide in our more urban projects. We've been doing quite a bit of that. That takes some time to assemble the land. It has to be in the right area. It takes a lot to plan those, how we're building the houses, but that's been underway this year. We were starting it a little before the pandemic, and then we went all in during the pandemic. And so I think that is something, but again, it doesn't appear overnight. It'll be several years down the road before they come to fruition. At that point, we'll have to see what the world looks like, but that changed our protocol. We still look at A+ sites in urban areas. We do think, people will come back to the cities and their jobs at some point, but we're taking a hard look at suburban low density stuff as well.
It's interesting that REI just built their corporate campus outside of Seattle, and as soon as it was done, they sold it because they realized that this cluster of working model actually was working out pretty well. So it does make you think about the future of uptown and office space, really does. So Justin, do you want to ask a question?
I've got a question from Ken Lamela, I believe. I'm guessing it. Have you considered projects focused on energy sustainability? You're talking about design in each project. How has your approach to design changed from the beginning of Northwood, Ravin?
All right, so for those that don't know, Ken was the dean of the College of Arts and Architecture. And I don't know if he knows, I'm going to call him out. He was one of the guys that gave me a C in that year. I had to repeat, probably warranted, but I was probably hitting a little bit of fatigue. But so thanks, Ken, for asking that question. So sustainability, that's been a topic since I got into the business, and it's become important. It's become watered down at times. We've done LEED projects. Every project we do since I've started is always certified in something. I can't always tell you that it gives a return, but it business-wise checks an important box, because there's a lot of institutions that won't buy or lend on something that doesn't have a sustainable green component to it. I think when times are good, it gets a lot of focus on being an important aspect of any project. How is this carbon footprint going to change things? What are you looking at? I think building codes have been changed to really try to push that upon people, whether they want it or not. So when times are good, it becomes a big focus. Many times we start green initiative, sustainable little small groups to really research it and bring things forward to the company and see if we can incorporate it. Then when we hit these recessions, which obviously I've been watching and gone through, it becomes less important. People are like, oh, every dollar counts. Are we really getting a return for this? Maybe that we can cut back a little bit on how much we were going to go above and beyond there. So it sort of comes in these interesting waves, but I believe you have to have done something long term. It's always going to be a question. You can never time the market. What are you doing? And I think it sort of comes and goes in waves as to the importance to the industry. But it's when we start to come out of this, it'll be a major topic again.
Okay, David. This is from Brian Cullinan. Your properties have amazing visual and textural design features. Looking at the pictures you displayed, I get a clear sense of the look and the feel. To what extent do you also consider the audio sense when developing a brand? What a brand should sound like? Perhaps it's because this is my startup business, but I can hear a distinct soundscape for each of those crafted environments you displayed. Is this a consideration of yours at all? Do you execute a sound design for a property?
That's a good complicated question. We do, it's an interesting sort of vocabulary that happens within the organization. So we have a number of architects or ex-architects that work for our company that do speak that language and do look at texture and talk about the sound, what impact it is. And and I've intentionally grouped that subset within our company to the other end of the subset, which is like, what are you guys talking about? What texture? I don't understand what texture is. And it brings like the perfect yin and yang to it. We've certainly had, and occasionally have to call our architect design focused people off the ledge where they've gone so far down the road that everyone's trying to Google what the heck they're talking about. Like, I don't understand what terminology you're using. I said, you're probably not going to find it on Google. Where we have to pull them back and say, at the end of the day, that we need to make financial sense. But we do, I never want to take away the passion that people have for putting their fingerprints on these projects. That's where you get the great projects, is the ones that are very passionate about design, that are focused on the details that only architect and design people would see and understand. You just can't suck that out. And if you only had business people, you'd be building boxes with maybe a door, but probably not, because that might be too much expense. So we definitely allow people to take their creativity further. I think that keeps them involved. You can definitely see different approaches from different design folks as to what they're passionate about in each of their projects. So it's an interesting dynamic. I will put in a plug that we're adding another entry-level development person. And I told HR, it's posted, I said, they have to have an architecture degree, because we've now sort of have the business guys have come through, 2 of them. And I said, now it's time to bring the other yang in. We got to have an architecture guy in there to be able to speak to the other side of it. So I think people laugh that I'm always trying to match the finance guy up with the architecture person.
This is a question that Justin and I developed just as a follow-up. So if you're interviewing for this entry-level position, what kind, and you mentioned you want somebody to have a professional architecture degree, but what kinds of qualities do you seek? What's a good interview from your perspective in terms of that candidate's ability to you have confidence that they'll be able to contribute positively to your organization?
What I always say is that in our world, what I like to hire is someone that doesn't know exactly what developers do. I think a big problem with our industry is it doesn't take a professional certification to become a developer, like it would to become a lawyer or something. You're not passing a bar. Anyone can become a developer. And I do think that there's a misconception in the world that developers live this like exquisite lifestyle. You know, maybe Trump probably pushed that as of late, of you're on a golf course, you're cutting ribbons, you know, you're flying in your helicopters. As a developer is the best job ever. And if you're in it for the money, that's usually a non-starter for me, because that's actually not really the way it is. And any great developer that I've talked to isn't focused on that. I mean, they're focused on returns, but that's not what drives them every day. So what I look for is a passion to have something there. I think the coolest thing about development is that you're leaving your fingerprints on the built environment for a long, long time. I won't say forever, but you know, the pride you take in driving friends, family by a project that you were involved in, saying, "Hey, I did that," is, you know, I don't think there's anything greater. You know, it's something you can point to. You're not just trading stocks in New York. You're pointing to something that you can walk through and see people living or shopping at. And you know, that saying that was mine and I was involved in that, and there's, you know, all these stories of things on it. That's what I want to hear in an interview, is that's what drives them. Because in any business that I've been involved in, money, you should go to Wall Street if you want to be on just about money, and you got to be about the passion of it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
David, we're up at the time here, but I'd like to call another audible because the conversation is really good. If we could go just 2 more questions, that would be fantastic from the audience. This one's a combined question, one from our Dr. Pieper, but also I think from one of our students, Bailey Grace Harrell. It's a question about recommendations for students. Bailey is a business and psychology major that wants to have own business one day. Do you think the MBA is worth the added knowledge when it comes to having your own business? Do you think a student should just continue their studies in the direct field, NMA or a master's or doctorate in psychology, or in your case, as it was, architecture? What are some of the recommendations you would make for our students?
I wish I had asked that question when I was in school. You know, I tend to have a pretty narrow view on it. I think that a lot of these programs, and I've been in a lot of them, oftentimes it's the degree to get you in the door. It is to make your resume stand out in a world of resumes for what you want to be doing. You know, that they're looking for a specific degree or a school that gets you in the door. From that, then it becomes about what you're going to do with it. You know, I started UNCC. Obviously, I've been in the business a long time. I've had folks from Harvard and MIT and, you know, every Ivy League you can think of work for me. And, you know, there's nothing different about them than the person that came from a less prestigious school. That just shows that they were book smart at one point in time, but that's not going to get them. Once you're through the door, that doesn't get you very far. It's what you can prove within the company, and are you adding value every day? You know, the degree of where it came from quickly disappears when you're in an organization of, okay, well now, great, what do you do? So my recommendation is you have to focus on it. You have to be cognizant of what it takes within your field to be recognized. What degree do people look for? I definitely think Crosland picked me up because I had MIT and Michigan on there. And then they saw, hey, he went undergrad in Charlotte. This is like, let's interview this guy. That's what I think was there. But once I was in, it was all, I started at scratch. I think you have to also think about when you're in that door, what are you going to do and what's a benefit for you? I think having that business training for me helped me with respect to understanding cash flows in Excel and doing a lot of the business analytical pieces. It wasn't so much about the degree, it was just why I was putting it to use. So I think there's no perfect answer, but I think it's get you in the door and then what's really going to help you when you're through the door. MBA, I think is great, but when I talk to MBAs, I want to know that they focused on something within the program. A lot of MBA programs now have specific tracks for real estate or finance or something. I think it's important to be pretty specific in today's world. This is why I took this class, because I'm really interested in this, and this is why I tracked in real estate. It wasn't just an MBA, it was an MBA with real estate. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. One more question, Justin, is that right?
Yeah, if I could.
Yeah, this is from Shannon Paget. You talked about some unquantifiable qualities in a new development. How do you decide which elements to add to get the most value? How do you pick additions in limited space? And how do you find out what is more desired for each development?
Great one to end on. And this is where the architect trained folks within our organization would tell you. So we work with a lot of analysts at banks, with our investors, everything else. You cannot do development on an Excel spreadsheet. There is, without a doubt, some art to it. There's some gut instincts that have to come into play. And you can't quantify. I can't show you on an Excel spreadsheet the return on investment on those things. It's a gut feeling, it's experience, it's researching what other people have done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. It's seeing what's successful. It's so many different things that come in there. If I had the other developers on this call, they would say exactly, because we're always sent spreadsheets and huge, 100-page analysis of a project on how it's going to succeed and what it's going to do. And there's a component of it that can't be put in the Excel spreadsheet of, what are you going to do that's going to make this special beyond the numbers? And it's gut, it's art. And that's why I don't think, this is an industry where you could learn everything in Excel and become an expert in it. I think you could easily trip up and do something that's not very nice and doesn't give a good return, but it looked great on paper. There's an art to it. For sure. And thankfully that's there. That's, what keeps people more successful than others, is how good is their gut instinct on making these determinations and running the numbers. But at the end of the day, you can run any number to show whatever you're believing. And so you got to have faith in your decision that it's going to be right. And then, if you're right 9 out of 10 times, you'll end up being successful.
Those are Hall of Fame numbers right there.
10's not too bad. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ravin. That was fantastic. Thank you all as well to the audience. Y'all been great questions. A couple there from Shannon and Brian, a couple of students of mine. So thanks for coming out. We'll be back in the spring. Just as a concluding real quick, we'll be back in the spring for a couple more events with our good friends in arts and architecture. So look forward to that. Hopefully we'll see you then. And I guess in the meantime, we'll wish you a safe and happy holidays.
Yeah. And so David, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you,
happy
everyone.
Holidays to you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.